In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front upper strut mount and bearings in this Volkswagen Beetle. Let's get into it. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle. In the trunk, access where the spare tire is, and then you want to grab this key. That's the wheel lock if your vehicle has it, and then this is for the little cap. Just grab that. You should have a little center cap here. You want to take a straight blade screwdriver, just get underneath, pop that off. Then you can take this tool that you got out of the trunk, go in one of those holes, and then you just pull real hard, straight back. And that pulls that cap off, and you can access the lug nuts. Take the lock, that's going to go on the keyed one. I'm going to remove the front wheels using a 17mm socket. Take the lug nuts off. Or lug bolts. And when I get to the last one, I'm just going to hold the wheel from falling off. And grab the wheel, slide it off. We're going to pop this wire off here. You can use a trim tool if you need to. Just slide it off. The brackets and out of the way. Now I'm going to take the nut and bolt out using a 18mm socket and an 18mm wrench. Hold the bolt, take the nut off. There we go. And the bolt should come out. Now we're just going to separate the knuckle from the strut. You can use a hammer, just give it a tap. What you can do is spread this on the back. There is a slice in the back where it wraps around the strut. If you have a spreader or even just using a pry bar, that would work as well. When you're doing the driver's side strut, this may be as far as you need to go. You may not have to take the knuckle down. On the passenger side, the axle is longer and the angle is not as great. You're going to be tapping on the frame right here. So you can only go so far with this. So we're going to have to take the knuckle out for this one. If you're struggling on the driver's side, then you can also do the same as here, but you may not need to. Just hammer it down a little bit and you should be able to take the strut out. We're going to take the caliper off, take these two caps off. Just pop these off with a screwdriver or a pick. And using a 7mm hex socket, I'm going to take the bolts out. Rock the caliper back and forth a little. And I'm just going to use a caliper hook. And you just want to hang it where you can, just out of the way. Now I'm going to pull the rotor off. There's a screw right here. Use a Phillips head screwdriver to take the screw out. If you have to, you can use an impact driver. Pull that out, and grab the rotor. Slides right off. If it's stuck on there, you want to hammer in that location. Right there, it should pop off. Disconnect the wheel speed sensor, just push down on the tab, slide it out and out of the way. We're going to remove the tie rod nut, use a 19mm socket. It's just spinning. If you have to, you can use a pry bar. to prevent it from spinning. I'm just going to pry down on here. There we go. Now separate the knuckle from the outer tie rod. You can give it a little tap underneath, or there is special front end tools you can use to get that off. You want to make sure you don't mess up the threads under here. Just pop it up. Take these 3 bolts out. Use a 13mm socket. Out. And slide those out. Up top, you're going to take this bracket off. This just has the nuts all attached to it in one piece. Take the axle nut off. You're going to need a 12.30mm socket. Take that off. Just like that. Now everything's disconnected from the knuckle. We can take a punch and just be careful of the knuckle falling on your feet. I'm going to punch the center axle straight through. I'm just using a punch so that I don't damage the threads. That's all the way through. It's loose. Now holding the knuckle, you can pull it out a little bit, tap it down. Should be able to slide it out. And there you go. I'm going to grab the strut from underneath and just support it, and then up top, using a 21mm socket, we're going to take that nut off. Underneath, the strut is spinning the center part, so we're going to just put some locking pliers on there. Just make sure it's as high as possible. Once that's off, pull the strut out. Now we're going to put the spring in a compressor to compress the spring, take the tension off the strut. You don't have to compress it too much, so that's good. I'm going to use some locking pliers at the top, right there. Using a 21mm socket, now I'm going to take the nut off up top here. Then we'll take the mount off and the bearing. It's right there. Take the bearing, it's going to go right there, and the mount, just like that, and the nut. Now, if the center shaft is still spinning, you might need some locking pliers. It's okay to do it as long as you have it towards the top. You don't want it anywhere near the seal down below. And now we're going to tighten this to 44 foot-pounds. And that's good. Take that off. Move that bumper up in the boot. Now we can loosen the spring compressor and remove the spring. And slide it out. Now we'll slide the strut in place. And get the nut on. If you didn't put this on, you want to put that in place. Get the nut started. Once you get on a bunch of threads, then you can let go of the strut and snug this up. And we'll torque that nut to 44 foot-pounds. Now we'll just line this up. Might have to twist the strut a little bit. Then you can get the axle in as well. Just give this a tap. Just put some pressure while you're trying to tap it up. And get the axle in, lower ball joint lined up. Make sure you take this plate, put that in place. Get the bolts started. And put those bolts in, get those all started. And snug up these bolts. You want to replace these bolts with new bolts, and then you can torque these to 15 foot-pounds and then an additional 90 degrees. Then go another 90 degrees. Okay, that's good. Just using a pull jack, I'm just going to raise up on the lower control arm. Just try to get the strut to fall in place a little more. You can tap it a little more with a hammer. That looks like it's almost all the way down. There it goes. You're going to see right here where this bracket is going to bottom out on the knuckle. That's as far as you want to go. You don't want to go any further than that. And I can lower the pull jack. We slip the bolt in and put the nut on. You want to replace the nut and bolt when you're doing this job. Snug that down first. And I want to tighten that to 44 foot-pounds. And then with a torque angle meter, you want to go an additional 90 degrees. If you don't have a torque angle meter, do the best you can. Now put the tie rod end in. Get the nut started. Now I'm just using the pry bar and just putting some pressure on the top part of the outer tie rod end. Just snug that up first. And torque this to 33 foot-pounds. That's good. Now I'll put the axle nut on. Get that lined up. And tighten it down. With the vehicle closer to the ground, I'm going to take 2 of the lug studs, get those started in there. And to prevent the hub from spinning, we're just going to put a pry bar. we're going to torque this to 148 foot-pounds. After you torque it, we're going to loosen it. We're going to loosen that nut 180 degrees. Then we'll take and spin the hub. Now we'll spin this 180 degrees. Let's put these down here. Now we're going to torque the nut to 37 foot-pounds. And then if you have a torque angle meter, you want to go an additional 60 degrees. If you don't, do the best you can. And put the rotor on. And the screw. Get that started. And just snug this down. You don't have to tighten it too tight, just snug. Good. Now slide the caliper bracket on, the caliper and the pads, and get the bolts started. Now you want to tighten these bolts down. And connect the ABS sensor, lock it down, push these wires, the grommets in place on the brackets, just like that. Now put the wheel on, line it up. Take the lug bolt, get that started. And the wheel lock with the key. Now we're going to torque these lug bolts to 89 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. And just go around again, double check. Take the key out and take the center cap. If that center ring popped out, you want to put that back in. Line that up. And pop it in place. Then if you have that little cap, you want to push that on.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.